This one's nice.
早点打比赛会把我们的状态以及气氛给调回来，所以这个入围赛对我们其实是有利的。
谢拉开了一个位置，谢这个风筝放得非常的好，但是正面的康帝想要去的一个留人，不敌大嘴的一个伤害，先被打倒，但大舅这边的输出，漫天飞羽，一个倒钩 shut down， 终于是杀掉了这个7个人。
Eğer Frozen ve beni oyunun erken dakikalarında hani öldürüp geri düşürmezlerse hani ileriki dakikalarda kazanma şansları yok.
已经收获3杀了，在我这边上一个侠倒钩拉住了前面的加里奥，直接把大叔给解掉，就剩下一个侠就弄一个弱弹出去撞到他，小炮跳过墙，这一波小炮收获了4个人头。
We always have confidence in our teammates. We just go step by step, game per game. We're trying to do this again.
牛都被炸了回来，但是顺带 Q 起了3个人，小炮在上方相助，小炮已经重置了自己的火箭跳跃飞机，位置很危险。Team One 在今天完成了他们不可能的逆袭救赎之战，来自于。
Nếu như bọn em thua WWE thì sẽ không có chuyện xảy ra cả. Còn nếu mà WWE thua thì sẽ là một thảm họa, tại đây là sân nhà của họ.
这次比赛在我们中国自己的主场举办，我们一定会竭尽全力把 WWE 最好的一面展现给大家。
Welcome back to our final day of the World's Play-In Stage. 2 best-of-5 series separate us from kicking off the group stage here in Wuhan, China. And I think it'll be no surprise to many that the WE crowd is out in force, ready to root for their hometown heroes. But first, and take a look at how Team One is getting ready alongside 1907 Fenerbahçe Esports.
Gonna be a tough match for both these guys. Already had to play 1 extra game over everyone else with the extra tiebreaker that they had. So you see they're tired, lounging, trying to catch up on their energy.
Yeah. 2 emerging regions will compete, but 1 will make it to the group stage, which is very exciting. All right, well, knock, knock, open the door. It's real. Dracos, Mark Z, Rusty, you feel... I'm so glad you guys followed me on that. Thank you. DMX. You got to get pumped on the desk, and DMX definitely a solid way to start.
It's what you hearing.
Listen. All right, well, yesterday, we welcomed 2 teams into the group stage, Cloud9 and Fnatic. We're going to see who joins them in our matches today. Things are going to kick off with 1907 Fenerbahçe versus Team One, followed by Team WE from the LPL, taking on Young Generation from the GPL. Now, before we get into those matches, let's pull up our Worlds groups to see what Cloud9 and Fnatic may be placed.
And the thing I'm really hoping for, as much as an NA fan, it would probably pain me to see them put in that group. I would love to see C9 end up in Group C, just so that we have a European team, a Chinese team, a Korean team, and a North American team all fighting out in a single group.
Yeah, Cloud9 could be in Group A or Group C. As an LPL fan, you know, I'm kind of happy to see them in Group C either way. Not too fussed, but if you're an NA fan, you absolutely want to see them in Group A. And I feel it feels kind of rough for Cloud9 because it's not like one option is super easy and the other option is like really hard. There's like clearly either way you go is going to be incredibly challenging.
No matter which way you go, then just put them in the hardest one, make it the most fun, have a crazy group. I would love if Group C just became the ultimate group of death.
Okay, now normally when I talk to you, you're like, God, please, let's get NA out of groups. Are you just feeling confident this year that you're like not worried about it?
CSM's got it, especially if WE doesn't end up there. So throw C9 to the wolves for fun, you know.
Good with sacrificing C9 for the good of NA.
Yeah, just for the fun of it, you know, and that for the whole world, honestly, you know, that's what we're about.
I don't know, there's a lot of Fnatic fans. I don't know if I can feel as comfortable sacrificing a Fnatic for the good of EU. And honestly, there's just so many, there's not a ton of variance in what can happen, but there is still, now that not all the Pool 1 seeds, we do have a slight variety of scenarios that can come through. And now I really wonder, is like, which group is actually going to be the best option for a lot of these teams going in?
It's tough to say because it feels like a lot of options for Group A and B. For most of these teams, they can slot into one of 2 or even both of those. And those 2 groups feel relatively similar right now with 2 top-heavy teams in SKT and EDG in one versus Longzhu and probably Immortals in the other. Gigabyte Marines and HQ are going to be playing the upsets in those. So if you slot into that, you hope you can take out the 2nd seed most likely.
Well, the name of the game is just become like top 2 in your group, right? Maybe you can't beat the Koreans, but if I was C9 or Fnatic, I want Group A because you just have to get through AHQ and maybe upset EDG.
Well, of course, we'll get to see that group draw tonight, but first we're going to focus in on our first matchup of the day. It's going to be pitting 1907 Fenerbahçe versus Team One Esports. And for anyone that's followed the qualifiers leading to Worlds, Turkey and Brazil, no stranger to facing one another on a big stage.
Yeah, they've played against each other since 2014, I believe. These guys have had a history ripe with matches against one another. Now, it was a 3-1 in matches, we thought, but it's actually 6-7 as far as games go against one another. It's very close, very back and forth. As of late, you would have said the Brazilian siders took over. All of 2016, they were beating the Turkish teams, but 2017 belonged to Supermassive, and we'll have to see if that continues here.
Right, and both teams had to take tiebreakers to get here, like we were saying at the beginning, so they've had a little bit more time to watch each other's games. They both have played more games, so that hopefully they'll get another look at some people, as well as, you know, you have one using subs and things like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they stack up, too, because they are some of the teams that have looked, not that they've had the hardest road, right? And in the past, when you look at IWC events, these teams were usually at the top of the standings fighting for their way in. So to see them kind of have these turbulent starts is really interesting. And now to find out how they stack up against each other as well, guaranteeing an emergent region on the group stage is pretty hype.
Yeah, and the turbulence is an interesting point because, of course, Fenerbahçe still finished #1 in their groups, beating HKA. And I mean, it wasn't an easy group, but they've got roster problems. It was all still culminating in this really awkward conglomerate of, I don't know what's happening on the Rift. Communication, I'm sure, is impossible for them. But they've managed to work it out. They got first and extra time, as you mentioned.
Yeah, the only team to upset a Pool 1 seed coming into it, and then at the same time, Team 1, 2 losses on the first day, really grueling games on the second day, but somehow still pull it out in that final tiebreaker match over Dire Wolves.
It was good to see, and now coming into this match, we learned Brewster is going to be the starting mid laner for Team One. Rusty, that does not look like a happy expression. Talk to me, man. What's the deal with Brewster versus Marv?
We were sitting here on the first day of play-ins. You were watching Team One play League of Legends, and everyone was beating them. You're like, okay, what do we do, Team One? How do we fix this problem? How do we make ourselves a better team? And we realized there was a sub on the bench who, in every single metric, is just statistically better. And that was Marth. We were like, fantastic, let's sub Marth in. They did, and they reverse swept and got the tiebreaker win to get here. And suddenly Bruce is back, who is statistically worse in every possible metric. And I honestly don't know why they've done it.
Okay, but even if Marth was the tipper, this team has come out and said that they, in the past, you know, they like to swap back and forth in mid laners. Do you think this is just the wrong choice at this point when you're going into a best of 5 with this pressure?
Yep. I would say it's something where, like, if you want to have 2 different styles, I'm down with it, but you should probably go with your best style first and use the other guy as a mix-up versus starting with the guy who's going to play Lucian mid and get destroyed by Jensen, or, you know, in this case, probably Frozen. So I'm with Rusty a little bit. I'm surprised to see Brewster coming out first.
Now, the other side of their strategy and what we've seen from this team is, of course, comfort picks have been big for them. They have a lot of unique kind of pocket picks that you may not expect coming onto the stage. How crucial are those options going to be against Fenerbahçe?
Yeah, so for me, comfort picks is a very big deal for any team because it gives that comfort. Now, you've got the Olaf that's been permanently banned. The one time we saw it for Fall, and it was a victory. You've got Trundle, you've got Mundo. He's a very good Shen player as well that I'm sure we've seen a lot of in the top lane. You've got a Tristana, and then you've got the Aurelion Sol Cassiopeia player in the middle lane that isn't playing because Bruce is a little bit more standard. But these comfort picks, they're also pocket picks. They give a style to the team, and that style is something that lets them prosper.
Yeah, that style, a lot of split pushing as well. You have up in the top lane Vert playing, you know, Gnar, Fiora, Shen, Galio, Camille, a lot of things that have either 1v1 pressure or extra globals to make plays on the map. So they definitely have this kind of divide and conquer play style.
All right, so if we're looking to divide and conquer playstyle, what is the best way to set that up? What is the best way to kind of find an avenue to make this effective against Fenerbahçe?
Well, generally speaking, whenever you have that kind of approach, you want to get a lead somewhere early in the game. Those are usually not like late game outscale and then team fight. So if they need to get a lead, the one place to look at is potentially bot lane. Padden statistically gets destroyed in the early game before turning into a totally different player and dropping tons of CSD. You see it right there, negative 21.8. But somehow his DPM is still very high. So he's a guy who, once he gets out of the laning phase, is when he starts to shine.
Yeah, Padden in team fighting, all of Fenerbahçe in team fighting is immaculate, honestly, and it's a surprise that they could do it so well when their laning phase is usually so poor. And that's the one place that you look at, the silver lining for Team One. If they want to get that split pushing that you mentioned into effect, then winning early game is the easiest way to do it against 1907 Fenerbahçe. You'd have to say this is the easiest matchup for them to win the early game, but they've never been able to do it themselves.
Oh, and it's a rough road too, right? Because we talk about those options taking lead, and you look at Fenerbahçe, you say, hey, as bad as, or as unfortunate as some of Padden's early games have been, as far back as he has fallen down, when they come into the mid game, he is excellent on picks like the Kog'Maw, and we see the rest of the team more than happy to peel for him, to play around him, to set him up, even if he was kind of a hindrance earlier in the game.
And it's something where the whole team kind of plays around him in that regard, where they have a lot of backup, a lot of utility, making sure that he gets into a great place. A lot of that comes down to Frozen, Crash, Thaldrin, all teaming up together. Frozen in particular, someone who does feel like in the late game he can be a big carry. We saw that in the Echo game in the tiebreaker.
Yeah, honestly, he was incredible, but it's at moments, and that's the coolest thing about it, because when it mattered the most, Frozen was able to make those big plays. The rest of the team also have big plays of their own when it matters for them, and Padden's the other person that we were obviously looking at for that. He got a 3v5 pentakill, man. Even if it was gifted to him, it was still 3v5.
I feel like the Quadra was legit, let's be honest. The first 4 kills were legit. The Penta was, hey guys, we're going to run this guy down just to give you the Penta.
That was gifted, and then Thaldrin, we were just saying, is kind of the rock for this team, and if, Vert is going to try and take all these split-pushing champions against him, it does feel like a really difficult matchup just because no one has been able to get a lead on Thaldrin yet, and if you're going to be taking these kind of 1v1 champions, he's probably going to have a really tough time getting any sort of advantage.
Yeah, well, it is an interesting match to see, so much to talk about, but that is enough from us. So let's send it to Medic and Vedius to kick off that match.
Thank you, Dracos, and cheerio, what ho, toodle pip, and a smashing good day to you out there in China and across the world. I'm Aaron Medic Chamberlain, and joining me today is the Welsh wizard himself, Andrew Vedius Day.
How are you doing, my fine friend?
I'm doing superbly, my good
Wonderful,
man.
wonderful. We have some fantastic League of Legends today, so why don't we get straight into it?
Yeah, let's begin this series by looking at the starting lineups. On the blue side, it's 1907 Fenerbahçe. Thaldrin is their top laner, their jungler is Crash, mid Frozen, bot lane Padden, support Japone, and their coach Padden.
And looking to take them down on the red side, it's Team One Esports. In the top lane is Vert, their jungler Forlan. In the mid laner will be Bruiser, their AD carry Absolut, support RedBert, and their coach Neki.
And I think when you come to these two teams, you can't forget the regional clashes that we've seen in the past 6-7 in favor of Brazil in terms of game win. But I'm sure Fenerbahçe will want to equalize that scoreline.
Well, I mean, after the group stages, you have to argue that right now the Turkish representatives are looking like the favorites. They had a bit of a close group going to that tiebreaker to determine who would be that first seed, and they were able to overcome HKA. But now we have to see if they can translate that into this series versus Team One. How will they perform in a best of 5, and really how will the young squad of Team One do now that the pressure is on them, because they did not have the easiest group and they did not look especially strong in Group B.
But they were able to come from being 3-0 down in that group to actually making it through to these elimination matches, beating Direwolves twice in a row and showing that they have some of that mental strength, that mental fortitude that you need when you come to the world stage.
And for me, one of the big things for them is about that comfort pick. Because I think that when we see them play the style that they had so much success on within their own region, that's where we see the true strength of a team like Team One. Things like the Olaf, things like the split pushes up in the top lane on Vert, where he brings out the Mundo and the Trundle. These are the special champions that really allow this team to succeed. And I'm hoping that we get to see that. Maybe not so much the Jungle Jacks. I like this very much to move away from those kind of picks. But I think that given the time that they've had to prepare and ready themselves for 1907 Fenerbahçe, I think that there's a good opportunity for them to show a better showing today.
And especially for someone like Forlan in that jungle. He's known almost as the entry fragger for this team. He's the guy that goes in aggressive early on, gets his team ahead, gets his team kills. And we didn't see that much of that in the playing groups. He had a high jungle proximity, but wasn't converting that into kills. We're on to pick and ban Fenerbahçe on the blue side, Team One on the red. And already that Olaf, that power pick, being removed by Fenerbahçe alongside the Kog'Maw and the Alistar.
During the regular season, Forlan was 8-1 on that Olaf pick. And in the tiebreaker versus the Direwolves, it was a big part of why they were able to get that win. So 1907 Fenerbahçe is saying, you know what, we're just going to take it off the board. Meanwhile, Team One, they're actually attacking one of the weakest early game performers on the side of 1907 Fenerbahçe in Padden, already taking 2 AD carries away from the Turkish squad. And it looks like that Civic could very well be left. That those are the only 3 AD carries that he's actually played. But you may expect something like a Kalista, given that they are on the red side.
I have to see what Team One decides to do finally. It is the Galio from Fenerbahçe, but Padden has been a performer who struggles in lane, but when it gets to the late game, absolutely shreds through his opposite numbers. He has been the standout performer for Fenerbahçe when it comes to team fights later on. Kalista left open here because of the Rakan ban from Team One.
Ooh, and it looks like 1907 Fenerbahçe are going to say, you know what, we will just pick that one up, and we're more than happy to take it. But remember, Kalista is very much about dominating the laning phase. She is an early to mid-game style of AD carry. Thanks to her ultimate, she's great at setting up these engages, and you have so many options to kind of force things in the mid-game. But that's not what we've been seeing recently from this Fenerbahçe squad. They've been more about the mid to late game team fight. So I feel like Team One are challenging Fenerbahçe here, and they're going to see, let's see how well you can hold up in our 2v2.
And it's something Team One do so well. They capitalize on their enemy's mistakes. So they're saying, here, we'll put you in a lane perhaps you're not as comfortable with and make you make those mistakes. They'll get the Sejuani for Forlan, a jungler that can work out early alongside the Lulu for RedBert.
But bear in mind that the Jarvan has also been left available. I know that Thaldrin is more than happy to play this champion. He's always a big part of allowing the team to succeed. He really is a core strength or structure that allows the team or supports the team, allowing them to succeed in a lot of these later game fights. So I think Fenerbahçe right now, they're going to look to get themselves the comfort jungle pick for Crash. He's had a lot of great jungle steals, or Baron steals rather, on that Gragas. And I wouldn't be surprised now if they rounded things out with something like a Gragas, or maybe even a Thresh, which is a very good pick into the Lulu.
Very good at catching the Lulu out. Fenerbahçe will go for the Morgana instead, though, trying to get rid of some of that CC chain we have seen a few teams bringing out. Fnatic, especially yesterday, were very good at catching people out with that crowd control. Team One now have the choice to go towards an AD carry, or perhaps lock in a mid laner and then look for bans in that second phase.
I wonder, because I'm very surprised right now that Jarvan has been left up for so long during the draft, but Team One are saying, you know what, we want to try and get a comfort pick for our mid laner. Bruiser, he did not have the best performance in this tournament so far. He felt pretty far behind when going up against Jensen especially. And now that he will be able to get that Syndra, very big power pick for him in the mid. A lot of setup as well in terms of the early game.
But he is playing against a mid laner that has had a lot of focus on him, both through the regular split and through this play-in tournament. Frozen has been one of the key catalysts for Fenerbahçe, especially with Crash being his old teammate, trying to synergize alongside him.
So now it looks like that Team One are just trying to take away some of the possible answers for Bruiser. And 1907 Fenerbahçe are going to do the opposite, saying like, oh, okay, we know what's pretty good into Kalista. We're going to ban away some of these AD carries. And a part of me feels like Team One have something special planned. I don't know what it is, Medic, but I just, based on the way the draft is going, I feel like they need to bring something special out, because Kalista is not the kind of champion you can let through. We saw what happens when you give it to a team like Cloud9 yesterday, and they very swiftly run away with the game. So given the strength of the champion in the current meta, you have to have something prepared.
Might save it for the last pick. We might see it here. No top laners picked for either side. Xayah snuck all the way through as well, so she will be locked in for Team One. Has been one of the priority AD carries across the course of the split.
But in terms of the 2v2, I don't think it's going to do a lot to be able to shut down this Kalista. When you look at things right now, 1907 Fenerbahçe definitely should have the advantage in terms of the matchup. But as we know, Padden is not known for his laning phase. He is not about dominating that 2 versus 2. So it's certainly going to be an exciting lane matchup to watch as Fenerbahçe round out with their final 2 picks.
Getting the Maokai for Thaldrin is just a great pick for Fenerbahçe in general. He's played incredibly well on it, ganks that mid lane incredibly effectively, and now they've got their mid lane pick to finalize into the Syndra. Already LeBlanc and Orianna have been removed. We have seen Echoes picked into it before, but it's going to be the Taliyah for Fenerbahçe.
So he's going more for the roaming style. Taliyah, very good at pretty much holding her own in any matchup, really. She doesn't really lose matchups, but at the same vein, she doesn't win them either. But what you do really want on Taliyah is pressure, because once you have pressure, it gives you the freedom to roam. Once you get that level 6, you have the ultimate, which makes it very easy to go from one lane to the other, cut off the escape routes of your opposition as well. And I think that's what Fenerbahçe is going to be looking for right now with the Kalista and the Taliyah. Early game playmaking on these side lanes, especially towards the bottom side of the map, seems very optimal. But with Team One Esports rounding things out with the Shen, it's going to make it harder for Fenerbahçe to try and force plays down in the bottom lane, because once he hits level 6, that Shen is primed and ready to turn those ganks in their favor.
Both these teams have had pretty dominant performances in their own regions. Fenerbahçe winning the last split in Turkey with outstanding fashion, in all honesty. Team One doing the same in Brazil, upsetting a lot of fans who are supporting INTZ or Pain or even Red Canids, and they are the new upstart team from Brazil that are now challenging on the world stage. But neither of these teams have really shone too greatly in the playing stage. Fenerbahçe struggled at times against HKA, Team One struggled against Cloud9, and now is their opportunity to prove that they deserve to be amongst the last 16 at Worlds.
I think both teams are happy with who they drew. from Team One Esports side, they're like, oh, we didn't get one from the big 3 regions. And from Fenerbahçe's aspect, they're looking at it from like, oh, okay, we actually got an opponent from one of the weakest performing groups. I think it's going to result in a really exciting matchup because both teams are confident. Both teams have drafted very strong compositions. And it's all going to be about this early game from the side of Fenerbahçe. How well can they utilize this Kalista? Can they finally build themselves an advantage in the 2v2? Or will Forlan be the catalyst that allows Team One to get the early lead and win out against Fenerbahçe?
Single best of 5 remains between one of these teams and a spot in the group stage at Worlds. And I'm interested to hear you say that Fenerbahçe are going to look for this early game because that has not been a characteristic of their play-ins thus far. They've been much more about having a minor deficit coming later on into the game and then being able to out-teamfight their opponents.
That's typically what we've seen, especially when you look at the tiebreaker between Fenerbahçe and HKA. In the early game, HK were dominant. They were destroying the 2 versus 2 down in the bottom lane. They had pressure in the mids. Everything was looking wonderful, but then they were not making the correct decisions in the mid game, and Fenerbahçe were very quick to immediately punish them. Multiple times we saw them getting picks here and there, pushing their vision line even deeper, and then starting to group up as a 5-man unit where this team truly shines. Padden's positioning and teamfight execution is fantastic, and that's largely because of the amount of input that Thaldrin puts in for his team. He really is a pillar that allows players like Padden, like Frozen, to shine at the top and allow them to really stand out. But it's thanks to that backbone that he provides on these big tanks. So I'm excited to see this slight pivot from the side of Fenerbahçe and how Team One will be able to respond, because I do feel like they're pretty confident. They're saying, we don't think you can get an early game 2v2 lead, so we're going to pick something that scales better, especially with the Lulu, and we're going to bring it in team fights a little bit later on.
And that hasn't always been characteristic of Team One. Thaldrin and Frozen are going to step forward here. Now spot that these Razor Beaks are not being done and steal away a few of them for their own. Puts Forlan a little bit behind in this jungle, so he needs to be cautious with his pathing and react to the aggression put on by Fenerbahçe early on.
I don't think he's going to be too upset about this, because by starting on the red, you typically want to go to wolves and then down towards the blue. You can see from Team One Esports, they did put that ward in the river to anticipate a potential invade from the side of Fenerbahçe, but no invade coming out. Instead, it happened on the top side, and that will allow Crash to get his early level 2, along with getting his own Raptors and red. Now he's going to path towards the top, but already in this 2v2 lane, you can see Padden and Japone being forced back, and this was a little bit what we were talking about. This is why I had a few question marks around this Morgana, because champions like the Thresh often have a lot more power when it comes to utilizing the strengths of Kalista in the early game.
Alongside that, Japone has the Ignite in the lane, so they're expecting to be able to win out this laning phase. Padden pushes forward a little bit as RedBert trades back onto him with the Kalista Lance, and this is something that Team One do well in that bottom lane. Absolut and RedBert, a great synergy between the two, but meanwhile Crash is coming up towards top. Vert will get himself away from Thaldrin, and Crash, as a jungler, obviously only substituted in to Fenerbahçe just before Worlds started. He used to play with Frozen on Longzhu, so there's a little bit of synergy there. But when he plays this Gragas, we tend to see him just slowly farm up and sometimes look towards mid for those early ganks.
Yeah, the thing about Crash is, what we heard a lot about from many analysts and experts was that this guy loves to get in your face early. He's all about trying to snowball the lanes, but coming onto a new team in a different environment, you've got to kind of adapt. You've got to shift and pivot your playstyle. And I think that he's done a fine job for now, but while his early gank failed, Forlan's looking to find some success in the top lane.
Entry Fragger looking for his first kill as Vert there as well, the flash away, but Thaldrin's going to get stunned, and this will be first blood for Team One in the top lane.
Forlan with a good movement up to the top side. He had the Raptor stolen away from him, but remember, he went from red into wolves, into blue, then up to Raptor, which means he was on the top side. Top was already pushing in the favor of Thaldrin, and now Vert is off to a great start.
Forlan's staying around here. Vert backs off a little bit. Thaldrin will spot him out. There's the taunt, and once again, Forlan's just looking for the setup. Crash is on the top side. He'll be looking to try and get towards his top laner to save him, but the stun comes out once again. Crash with the belly bop knocks him back. Thaldrin down to half as Vert puts down the Spirit's Refuge. Fenerbahçe able to fight this one out as Crash came to the rescue for his top lane. And meanwhile, in the bottom lane, a root lands onto Absolut, and he has to use the heal and the barrier. The Ignite ticking. Padden with the final shot gets the spear in the back, and now RedBert's trying to turn it around. He does get the help picks and will trade trade 1-for-1 in the bottom lane.
Wow, action happening all across the board, but this time 1907 Fenerbahçe are able to answer the pressure being put out from Team 1. Forlan trying to get those early kills for his team. He knows how important it is for them to have that early advantage, especially against the Kalista, and he's investing it into the split pusher in Vert. This is the first kill that happened down onto Thaldrin. Successful gank. They get that early first blood onto the top lane split pusher that has given them a lot of success in the past. And while all this was happening, an engage happens down bot. Absolut getting a little bit too aggressive there, sitting in the minion wave for a very long time and really soaking up way too much damage than he should have. Unfortunately for Padden, this early game Lulu damage is surprisingly high. So he ends up giving away his life as well, but the fact that they're able to get a kill just goes to show that Padden, he's not messing around this game. He is very much about trying to answer the, or try to utilize the early pressure that he has on this Kalista.
Having the Ignite in lane definitely helped them out as well, as RedBert's heal was not as effective as it could be. We see Padden go back and secure himself a recurve bow. Will definitely help him out in the lane a little bit. Lots of focus towards mid here, though, from Team 1 as they bring RedBert and Forlan across. Crash is towards the bottom side of the map, perhaps eyeing up a gank on Absolut.
We talked a lot about the AD carry and how Padden, during the laning phase, he really is rather weak, minus 21.8 CSD. And this is the thing about Padden, he is very much a double-edged sword where during the laning phase, he's kind of like a wooden stick. He kind of hits you and it doesn't do much damage, but when it comes into team fights, he's kind of like Excalibur. There is no sword that matches its team fight prowess. And this is where he's really allowed to shine. We've talked a lot about how he has shifted this style and already he's doing great. But Padden, he's so far during the laning phase off to a fantastic start.
It is a lane we expected them to win as well, so I have to see how they're able to translate that first kill into more in this bottom lane, because that's something Fenerbahçe haven't always been the best at, actually accelerating when they have that early gold lead. And in fact here, Team 1 with that extra kill are still sitting about 400 gold ahead.
And while this is a great shift for the side of Fenerbahçe in terms of their play style, have a look at Bruiser trying to make a play up towards the top side. A lot of investment from Team 1 Esports to trying to snowball Vert. He is playing Shen. And one of the most successful champions I saw from Team 1 during their regular season, especially during their playoffs, was when Vert got his hands on Shen. This is a team that knows extremely well how to utilize side lane pressure. They know how to play the 1-3-1, the 4-1 style of play, and looks like Fenerbahçe are trying to shut that down.
Thaldrin's going to go in, the knockback onto Vert as well. No flash for him and no way of escaping Crash and Thaldrin, who will be able to secure the kill. 2-2. Fenerbahçe and 1 are even in the early game.
So many ganks happening onto both these tanks. Not typically where you expect all the early jungle pressure to go, but so far it is keeping the game very even. Identical scorelines for both these top laners. And this could hurt Vert later on, as he will try to set up the 1-4 style of play that 1 are looking to take advantage of. But Fenerbahçe, as we said, great team fighting team. It's going to be fascinating to see how both these teams force the style that they are so comfortable at using.
And alongside that, you have to think of the pressure on the players themselves. Momentum in a best of 5 is incredibly important, Edius, and being able to get the first win on the board, being able to say, yep, we're able to actually shut this team down when playing a composition we're comfortable with, sets you up for success so well as you come later on into the series.
I'm just looking at the state of the map right now, because while Team 1 do have a slight lead, things like the Infernal Drake are on the board, and right now, neither team putting a huge amount of emphasis on trying to get it super early. You can see a bit of vision coming out from Bruiser in the bottom half of the river. And there are pings now coming down, so we were just talking about low focus, and Fenerbahçe see this as an opportunity to make something happen.
Rosen on a ward, does know that Bruiser's around there because of the ward that Bruiser has just stepped across, and Bruiser is actually relatively even in this lane. There hasn't been too much focus from the junglers mid, but Bruiser really struggled playing up against Jensen when they had to play them in groups, and this is a much stronger showing from him early on.
It does help when the jungler doesn't come mid like 3 to 4 times in the space of 5 minutes, but that is what comes with playing against a player like Jensen. And Frozen, he's pretty much just been holding his own alongside Bruiser on this Syndra. We haven't seen a huge amount of early game plays being centered around the mids, but I'm sure Bruiser has no issue with that. A lot of vision now being invested from 1907 Fenerbahçe in the bottom side of 1's jungle. Team One. They have no idea where he is. It looks like he's trying to steal away this blue buff.
Misses the body slam, the knockback will come out. There is the unleashed power straight onto the base of Crash, and he will get removed from the map by Team One.
Good utilization of the Shen ultimate there. Just as Crash tries to get a punish onto Bruiser, they're able to instantly turn it around, demonstrating some familiarity with this Shen pick, instantly coming in, ready to save his mid laner and turn the fight in their favor.
And it's the strength that we said Team One have. They capitalize on their enemies' mistakes. When they see someone out of position, they make the play, and now they're making the play for the Inferno. They secure it, but Padden is not done. The TPs are going to join this fight as they look for the root. Thaldrin goes in onto RedBert. He's used the wild growth, but he will be the first to fall. Team One just looking to run away. They're accepting a kill and a blue buff in exchange for the Inferno.
So this time round, Vert didn't have the Shen ultimate to save his teammate's life. So Thaldrin, he wanted to take advantage of the TP. Now they couldn't get the Infernal Drake, but they are able to get one kill. It did cost them a teleport, but Vert also used his teleport to try and match it. This is where the play all kicked off. And really, you have to criticize Crash for trying to make this play. He's not showing full respect towards the Shen ultimate. He thinks that he has enough damage with the element of surprise aspect that he and Frozen were ready, trying to get the collapse down, and they end up losing their life instead. So, arguably a bit of a misplay, a bit of over-eagerness on the side of Crash.
Coming back down to that bottom lane where we saw Padden have the advantage early on. He's got the kill in that last fight. He's now 20 CS up as well, and we want to start to see this translate into tower damage, into pressure on the rest of the map, because you have to use this Kalista while she spikes. Otherwise, as you get later on in the game, you will get outmatched by something like Xayah.
But I think that just for Padden as a whole, this is great in terms of confidence and also just for the team, because we know the 1907 Fenerbahçe are a great team fighting team. We know that they've been able to come from a deficit thanks to their ability to work as a 5-man unit. And T1 Esports threw out the challenge to Padden and said, we don't think you can build an early game lead through your bottom lane. And they were the ones that ended up giving that early lead over thanks to a failed 2 versus 2. So Padden, off to a great start. Likely going to transition this well, but it now matters about how well they can deal with the split-pushing Shen being played by Vert, because this is the style that Vert likes to use, as it looks like Fenerbahçe trying to set up a bit of a dive in the middle lane.
And this is what Thaldrin likes to do. He is the pillar of the team, and he likes to get these ganks off. Flash straight into Crash. Bruiser knocked back. The seismic shove will spell his end. Fenerbahçe get the kill. Now Forlan's going to try and protect his tower a little bit as he forces Thaldrin back. The Sat Magic healing up, and Fenerbahçe will be able to get the kill in the dive.
And this is why we call this man a pillar. He is the foundation of this team that sets up his carries for success. We saw this in the group stages against teams like HK and Rampage, where he would roam from the top lane and try and get his mid laner killed, using the Maokai, using the ultimate, and he's found success in the mid lane once again.
And it's the timing with which he does it as well. He is the captain of the team, and he knows when those Stand Uniteds are up and when those teleports are up and when people can actually join that fight. It was superbly done by Fenerbahçe. They also secure first tower for the first time in the tournament, and they get a gold lead of about 2,000 here over Team One.
So what we're basically saying is the Turkish representatives looking rather strong in their first game of this best-of-5 series. Team One tried to challenge them, and Fenerbahçe are certainly answering the challenge. But now it's very much about how they transition it. Let's have a look back at how this play came about. Thaldrin, he just walked down. There was no vision on the side of Team One. You can see on your minimap, no wards on the top half of the map. It gave him the freedom to just walk straight through the jungle, set up the flank. The ultimate was used to force the flash out of Bruiser, but then Crash was there to cut off his escape. Beautiful mid lane dive that will also set them up nicely to work towards that mid lane tower after they've gotten their hands on that juicy tier 1 up top.
Padden and Japone being rotated up towards the top side to try and shut down Vert in this split push. In fact, they're going in with the Fate's Call into the Soul Shackles. Vert flashes away, respect, but gets caught in the binding, puts down the Spirit's Refuge. Padden will still get the stacks from this, though, as he looks to dive. The Shen underneath the tower. And 13 minutes in, Padden is already 3-1.
You have to question the decision-making there from Vert. The top laner goes missing for a long time. You've already lost your bottom tier 1. This swap should be expected. But instead, he overstays in the top lane. He also eats the binding from Japone. And now they're looking to lose this tier 1. Fortunately, Team 1 will get there just in time to defend it. But this bottom lane of 1907 Fenerbahçe are really stepping up in this first game.
Exactly what we wanted to see from them, and Frozen is looking up towards the top side for a little bit more. Stand United is available for Vert as he comes up, not even going to channel it yet as one are going to get dived underneath this tower. There we go. Absolute pops the barrier. Wildcard used as well. The dive continues. Fenerbahçe trying to get what they can out of this fight. They take the tower first. The stun is going to land onto Absolut. Forlan dead. It's a double for Frozen, and one are just getting scattered to the winds. A great binding from Japone. 3 kills down. RedBert running away, but I'm not sure he's going to escape today as Fenerbahçe collapse from all 4 sides, and they play the early game well. They don't even need to get to the late game. They don't even need to get to team fights because Fenerbahçe are routing Team 1.
Beautiful dive once again. Thaldrin looking to round out the fight with another kill onto RedBert. Everything going fantastically for the Turkish representatives. This is fantastic in terms of their early game. We wondered how they would use the early advantages built both up in the bottom lane and in the mid lane thanks to the roams from Thaldrin, and you can see the difference that Padden has made compared to his average throughout the tournament.
And when you give an AD carrier that's immense in teamfights that sort of early lead, you can only suspect that he will be devastating as this game goes later on.
So, the thing about this play you have to realize is that Fenerbahçe is so much faster on the play. We needed to see that Shen ultimate now. Keep your eyes on the minimap too, where the Syndra is. She is one of the big pieces of damage that is not in this fight yet. So by the time she finally joins, yes, she lands a stun onto the Kalista, but Padden's damage has already been done. Thaldrin, he's dishing out his fair amount of damage as well. And Team 1, they're just too divided, they're too spread out. They're not ready for this kind of collapse. And this was one of the biggest weaknesses we identified about them from their playoff run was that, yes, they're really good at using side lane pressure. They're really good when the enemy team is split up. But when their opposition just group up as a 5 and come at them, especially only 15 minutes into the game, they kind of crumble. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to react. And 1907 Fenerbahçe are saying, well, okay, we'll just group up as often as possible and we'll force you into this situation and we'll get the win every time.
As you say, that is 16 minutes in, they now have a 5,000 gold lead. It's the sort of lead we saw from C9 and from Fnatic and from Team WE in their dominant games, and they don't look like they are stopping at all. They've had so many great rotations. Frozen using that Weaver's Wall incredibly effectively to join fights when he needed to. And once again, he's going towards mid. It's Thaldrin and Frozen. It's the dynamic duo trying to catch out Brucer. Thaldrin will be able to lock him up with the cat, and he will get the kill. The pillar on which Fenerbahçe stands once again helps Frozen in the mid lane.
Setting up for his team for success. Thaldrin finding so many fantastic picks for Fenerbahçe, working with Frozen to shut down an overextended Brucer once more. I was about to bring up the topic of how do we find ways of Team 1 coming back into this game, and one of them was they need to be the ones to find picks. They need to be the ones to punish the slight overstep from Fenerbahçe, but they can't afford to make those kind of mistakes themselves. They cannot afford to be the ones overstepping. And unfortunately for them, Fenerbahçe is now in an extremely dominant position. They're going to utilize this Rift Herald to better break into the set of tier 2 towers. And now what I want to see from them is the movement of their vision line up towards the top half, or maybe even the bottom half of Team 1 Esports jungle. The world is their oyster at this point of the game.
Forlan looking to make that pick you wanted. Vert there as well, but there's not much more damage. Explosive cast comes out. Forlan still trying to sweep away Frozen, but the Sejuani can't freeze the Taliyah in place. Brucer eventually joins the fight, but won't be able to get any Scatter the Weaks down. And Fenerbahçe are just starting to push forward into the jungle of Team 1.
You have to question the decision-making here from Team 1, though. Why is the AD carry and support in the bottom lane when you have a Shen? They try to interrupt Crash and his spawning, but the Black Shield prevents the interrupt. They're able to get the Rift Herald out. He's still going to be at full health, too. Fenerbahçe, they are not taking their foot off the gas pedal.
And one of the major worries we had for Fenerbahçe coming into this series was the synergy they had with Crash, because he is a new player, but you can see just from that play there that Japone and Crash and the rest of Fenerbahçe are on the same page.
Oh, he's fine, he's fine.
He's not going to go for it.
Yeah, he's okay.
They're going to go for the mid lane tower instead.
Flank from Thaldrin.
This is something we see him do so often. Get that Nature's Grasp off, look for the catch, perhaps onto Brucer or onto Absolut, but good play from Team 1 to block the cats that were coming in to try and secure a lockdown.
Also, a bit too early from Thaldrin. He saw Minion Wave already there, but then it instantly gets cleared out from Brucer, so the ultimate was used to zone away Team 1 from the tower. But unfortunately, Fenerbahçe didn't have the Minion Wave to then commit to that objective once they were zoned off. Now they have a Siege Minion and plenty of damage down onto this tower. This should be an easy pickup for them. them. 5-0 in their favor right now. 1907 Fenerbahçe looking fantastic in this first game.
Have to remember that Team 1 are a very young team as well. No player on this team above 20 years of age, and sometimes it just takes you a little bit of time to acclimatize to the stage you're on, especially when you're playing a lane that you need to try and go even, or that you're calling your opponent out and saying, we don't think you can play as well as you proposition to do in draft. When that goes against you, it can definitely play on your mind. So I want to see just a bit of patience here from Team 1. They do have scaling on their side with the Xayah, with the Lulu. They can play late game. The question is whether they can hold back the hordes of 1907 Fenerbahçe for long enough.
Exactly that. And Team 1, you have to remember this is still a best-of-5 series. There's still plenty of opportunities to turn things around later on. But with the game not over just yet, after we did see a 60-minute slugfest between Lion and C9 yesterday, you never know if teams are able to hold the line. It's very much about how Fenerbahçe find ways to break into the base. And now, this is very early into the game, but Fenerbahçe, they're going to start thinking about this Baron objective, not necessarily to take it, but to try and find picks onto their opposition. Push vision deep into the enemy half of the jungle to look for flanks like this one.
Thaldrin with the TP. I don't think Absolut has realized this has happened yet as the shield comes out. RedBert there as well. Forlan looking for the flank. They'll knock Thaldrin back, but already Absolut's taking the chunk. RedBert there as well. Here come the rest of Fenerbahçe. Brusa off towards the side, trying to knock them back. The seismic shove does not connect, and Fenerbahçe are just going to continue to roll this forward. However, they are flanked. They get some damage onto Bert, who flashes away. The explosive cast helps them secure the kill, and now the Feather Storm has to come out from Absolut. He flashes. Brusa still off towards the side. Great Glacial Prism onto Frozen, but he will cleanse that away. He is at 1 with the ice. And now Fenerbahçe are looking to go towards that Baron.
Now the jungler's still alive for Team 1. Fenerbahçe could only find a single kill onto Vert, and he still has teleport available. Fenerbahçe, they don't want to commit to the Baron though. They're still eyeing up those picks.
Not quite a Weaver's Wall that locks in Team 1. Forlan's going to jump across the wall and bring Thaldrin with him, and now he's caught in the wrong place as RedBert comes across to try and help his jungler. If they can take down Forlan, Fenerbahçe can look for that Baron, but they're going for RedBert instead. Absolut pulled off towards the side as Thaldrin is that tank, is that shield that Fenerbahçe need when the going gets tough and when they're looking to close out games.
This is much more of what they wanted. Frozen, the ultimate initially does not look good, but then Team 1 stick around too long. They do not want to give up all this pressure around the Baron, but because they overstay, 1907 Fenerbahçe go for the punish, and now they've got their eyes on this Baron. With the Kalista, with the Gragas, they have everything they could need to shut down that objective.
22 minutes in, they have an 11,000 gold lead. It's just ticked over, it's 10,000 gold still at 22 minutes, 5 towers to none, 13 kills to 4, a Baron in their back pocket, and a 5-1 Padden coming out from laning phase.
Yeah,
that's what I want to see.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good if you are a Turkish fan. If you're a Brazilian fan, on the other hand, I'm sure you'll be thinking about how you adapt. You always have Marth on that substitute bench. If you need to bring him in, he has been perhaps slightly more consistent than Brusa across the course of this tournament.
But it also comes back to one of the... oh, yeah, we're going to have a quick look at that Weaver's War from Frozen. We have... they wanted to let the Baron go, but they just couldn't quite do it. You can see Thaldrin, he's able to land the W down onto Forlan. The rest of the team goes for the collapse. RedBert, unfortunately, you can't really provide big enough shields to shut down 4 members, which means that multiple members end up dropping, and now Forlan looking for a pick.
Gonna jump straight onto Frozen. The shield comes out, but it might be too little too late. Does manage to flash to safety. Brusa had to flash for that as well, though, so it ends up being a summoner for summoner exchange.
But Fenerbahçe, they still have the Baron. They've got their eyes on the bottom lane. Vert, he's going to struggle to hold Thaldrin up in the top lane. Now they take the objective down, and Fenerbahçe, this is great from them. You know, their individual lane is stepping up. Thaldrin continuing to be that true core of the team, really once again setting up a lot of the map for success, either being it in terms of engages or setting up Frozen for success in the middle lane, along with Padden just stepping up individually. That 2v2 really holding its own, getting their own advantages. And because all of this came together, the already good strengths from Fenerbahçe combined with the new strengths we're now seeing from Fenerbahçe and Japone, this team is looking very convincing in this first game.
do still have to close it out. Fenerbahçe have the longest game time of any team in play-ins, and sometimes it's because they can't quite close out when they do have a lead. You see Padden forced back there. They're trying to play up towards the top side as Thaldrin continues to push in, but Vert does have the teleport advantage and the Stand United if a fight was to erupt.
You've also got to respect the Team 1 composition as well. While they are certainly behind, there is a lot of instant burst and pick potential from the side of things like Syndra, from the Sejuani, from the taunt of the Shen. A lot of things that you just have to show care towards, because when you have such a convincing lead, you don't want to make one of those silly mistakes and potentially throw it away. As now Thaldrin, you'd think he'd be in danger, but he's in his natural habitat. He is a tree of the jungle, of course.
King of the jungle at the moment as well. No one really can step up to him. Fenerbahçe secure themselves their second Mountain Drake, and with it they've got some pretty strong items as well. Triple item finished on towards Padden. You've got triple item as well on your mid laner as he puts down the Weaver's Wall to try and shut Team 1 away, and this is exactly what you want to see when you're trying to take an inhibitor. Put the wall down and it opens up so much ground for you.
Love the ultimate there from Frozen Zones. The entire lineup of Team 1 away from the objective. That will be the first inhibitor of the game going in favor of Fenerbahçe. They also have the double mountain to add insult to injury. Now they've got their eyes on the rest of the map, but the Baron's going to be wearing off, so likelihood is they will back away. Then they start grouping at mid lane, they send Thaldrin up to the top, and they may even wait for the next Baron, depending on how safe they want to take it.
They will have the Weaver's Wall up as well pretty soon. This is League of Legends by numbers for Fenerbahçe. It's much more patient, much more controlled. It's exactly what we wanted to see. They've been able to maintain a gold lead, a sizable one in 11,000 at this 26-minute mark, and it's never really looked like they were going to release their grasp on this game.
And it's just unfortunate for Team 1, because when you look at how their early game went as well, you'd think their game plan kind of went the way it wanted. Brewster holding his own up against Frozen in the mid lane. Vert was getting early advantages against Thaldrin. They sent 2 ganks up into the top half of the map. Fallout was even able to give him first blood. And now you're saying, oh, okay, we have a pretty strong Shen, who once he hits level 6 has the ultimate, and we can look to make a bot play, but Absolut and RedBert, they made that fumble early on. They fell behind and they couldn't really do much as a result. And then Crash just kept ganking the top side, so Vert couldn't really use his pressure anywhere else on the map. And I felt like Team 1 came in with a strategy in mind, but when it came to the execution, they just fell short. So coming into Game 2, I still have high hopes, given that right now, things are looking very bleak for them as Fenerbahçe look to take their second inhibitor of the game.
Once again, 1907, Fenerbahçe just closing in on the win. Padden takes a Scatter the Weak to the base. Here comes the explosive cask as well. The Stand United onto Team 1. But Fenerbahçe, 1907, are able to survive for the time being. The inhibitor's still alive here for Team 1. If they can get the engage they want, perhaps they can start to come back into this game. It seems like a monumental task, a mammoth task for them. But Team 1 have come from behind many a time before. Vert locked out towards the side. The inhibitor is being pressured by Padden and Japone. A good finding is going to connect, and now we'll see Thaldrin stepping up to the front. Already, RedBert is just dead, and Fenerbahçe are going to push forward further and further. This will be their second inhibitor. They can just go mid, or perhaps they'll even look to push in this next wave.
Keep your eyes on the bottom lane too. There's a big minion wave stacking up. There's a flash from Thaldrin.
And the seismic shove just deleted and demolished. Team 1 lose a man, and now Fenerbahçe are going to look for the push. Vert jumps in, but there's just no damage at all from Team 1. 1907 Fenerbahçe are looking to clean this up. It will be a clean ace for them as they take down Absolut. They're going for the Nexus Towers, and they're going to be 1-0 up against Team 1.
Very convincing game from 1907 Fenerbahçe Esports. 18-4 is the kill score with a 15,000 gold lead to round things out.
And if you're a Turkish fan, this is exactly what you want to see. Fenerbahçe clean in the early game, clean in the mid game, and clean as they take down the Nexus to go 1-0 ahead.
So clean, I can see my reflection in the medic. Very good execution all throughout. Have to bring my eyes once again back to Thaldrin. This guy, he just seems to be such a big catalyst for the team, whether it be engages, whether it be roams, whether it be just providing utility and protection for his team. He is one of the standout players for me, alongside Padden, who really just did step up during the laning phase, getting those 2v2 kills, bringing that early pressure to the rest of the map. and demonstrating that, you know what, we can win laning phase. Yes, we didn't have a great performance during group stages, but we had a tough group. We often pick losing matchups. And now, once you give us the ability to win those matchups with a champion like Kalista, things get a little bit rough for you.
And the question is for Team One, how do they change? How do they adapt coming into that next game? Because they do have strengths. We've seen their pick potential can work, their ability to capitalize on enemies' mistakes. Well, to hear how 1907 Fenerbahçe picked up the first win of the series, let's hand it over to Dracos and the analysts.
Thank you very much, Medic. A strong initial showing from 1907 Fenerbahçe coming in. Was pretty close, it felt like, early on, but they honestly just smashed it from the mid-game.
And I think I understand what ONE Esports is looking for here with the draft. They banned the Cog Trist. They're saying Padden is only good late game. Let's force him to put the priority on this early game champion. And if he plays it, he shouldn't do well on it. And if he doesn't play it, we'll take it in the second rotation. Then we'll have something to beat him even harder in lane.
Turns out he's good at playing lane as well when you give him someone like Kalista, 100% pick ban champion for a reason. And unfortunately for Team One, whilst you can see merit in the idea, the execution is still something that is going to be a far throw away from what they're capable of doing against Kalista.
Yeah, so I want to call you guys out a little bit because we started with, we're going to have a rock in the top lane in Thaldrin, and bot lane is going to be a potential weakness. But when we look at this first role, that's not really what happened, guys. I'm going to need you to run me through this. Explain what went wrong here.
Well, first off, this is just a good gank by Forlan, able to get onto Thaldrin. You saw Vert kicking that one off, looking like a basic trade. Thaldrin flashes a little early, mistake there, but it's tough to say exactly how we should play it. He dies, and at the same time, Padden starts taking this all-in down the bot side. They're able to convert on this kill from a point-blank binding by Japone. Really good job stepping up and making sure Absolut had nowhere to go.
And that's where the Lulu does come into play when you look at the 2v2 fight in particular. It's a good trade from RedBert, good awareness, but ultimately Lulu's getting the kill where Kalista's getting the kill on the flip side. So whilst we saw a lot of resilience from Team One, still a lot of early aggression, and again, trying to utilize their team composition and their strategies against 1907 Fenerbahçe, it didn't really happen in the end because it was still matched.
And that's really scary because I feel like if you're on the side of Team One Esports and you're like, hey, we can attack the bottom lane after this game, you're significantly less confident in that strategy.
Yeah, because Padden ends up at 10 minutes plus 12 CSD, at 15 minutes plus 25, ends up using that Kalista pick to smash. The one thing that did work out decently well against FB was the fact that they attack the top lane. They kill Thaldrin, which is something we haven't seen a ton of. So maybe if they go for their more aggressive top lane picks, things like that Trundle, Mundo, Camille, Gnar, who knows what, if you start converting these kills topside, it actually gets a much bigger lead than just a Shen kill.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the biggest problem that you're looking at, is that they have a Shen and they were ganking for the top lane, when realistically you bring that champion Sejuani down to the bottom lane to gank for Team One. Maybe the kills are more successful. Maybe you do shut the Kalista down, and that looks a little bit better for your win conditions as a team, not getting the Shen going against a Maokai.
Now, the other thing I want to look at is the mid lane before we go any further in the game, because we talked about Bruiser, we talked about Marth, but it didn't feel like a bad game, right? It just felt like, but I also didn't feel a ton of impact. It is not like Syndra hard carried. Would we have expected Marth to smash lane? What is the actual difference here?
For me, it kind of felt like if you look at his play, there were some minor mistakes, missing his Ws, missing his stuns, some combos not going out quite right, but it still feels like Bruiser's not as high on the tier list as Marth is, so I'd rather see him a little bit more, but I have a hard time pinning this game specifically on Bruiser.
Yeah, Bruiser played adequately, but that's not the kind of adequate that wins you games. You want to see what Marth's doing more, which is leaving lane. And quite simply, that's what Frozen was doing literally everywhere. That guy was all over Summoner's Rift, quick to react, quick to the jump, always there before Bruiser.
And it's good that you bring that up, because when we take a look at our next replay brought to you by Acer Predator, you can see what happens when this team is freed up to move around the map.
Both teams transitioning up to the top side. Good wall off there by Frozen, pinning them under the turrets at very low. It's going to make this dive easy because you focus down members when they're low, or if you can't get a good target on somebody, just finish that turret off.
Yeah, and the fundamentals, knowing the shot calling from the whole team is you want to kill the turret, make sure that it's not doing damage on top of this, and they're still getting the team fight going at the same time. All of the Morgana bindings were connecting. And far as execution goes, it was still done very cleanly from the side of 1907 Fenerbahçe, but ultimately that's what was necessary. The game could have gone the other way if that dive went poorly, and it was a risky choice, but they made the choice and it worked.
Yeah, beautiful goal graph there out of 1907 Fenerbahçe. Able to just grow that lead slowly over time, close the game out very quickly, sub 30 minutes, and a great start to the series for them.
Yeah, now the interesting thing is we just have confirmed that Team One have chosen blue. There are going to be no roster changes, so when we're not looking at the mid lane about individual players, that turns us instead to talk about draft, to talk about strategy, and we talked a little bit about playing around the bottom lane as an option, but what is the actual best avenue right now for Team One to come back into the series and take a win?
For me, I just don't think going bot lane the way they did is quite right. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do leaving up the Kalista, but your bot lane is not like a huge pressure point either. You saw that Absolut had a negative 14 CSD, so it wasn't like, oh, well, he's doing good, and then Padden's doing bad. So you went for this weird strategy trying to play around the bot lane, and it didn't work out. I would rather see more resources invested up in the top side.
Yeah, drafting specifically, I wouldn't say the AD carry ban should be the exact same. Things should change there. The big one that I have to look at, though, is towards the middle lane. I honestly just believe that Frozen was able to hard carry in this game with his performance as an individual. And when you look at the comparison between the mid laners, Brewster needs to stop him from roaming around, stop him from being able to get around and make plays. Well, you can get rid of Taliyah instead of doing all of that in the first place. So perhaps instead of the Tristana ban, just get rid of Taliyah.
Yeah, they got rid of Ori and LeBlanc. I mean, Frozen has a really deep champion pool. It does feel a little weird to throw so many bans at him, but it does feel like, just generally speaking, 1907 Fenerbahçe have a lot of different things that they can play across the board.
Yeah.
Feels difficult for one to find a way to ban them out.
When it comes to strategy in a best of 5, when you're the winning team, when you're Fenerbahçe, is there really any pressure on you to change anything? Of course, you're now going to be side swap, but outside of that, are you pretty comfortable just taking a similar strategy and playing this game out the same way you did this one?
You can use the same strategy, but the risk is that Team 1 have worked out that strategy. And so there's always going to be the opportunity to bring out something different, continue to surprise them, and just best them through the entire best of 5 by showing the depth of your strategies. Yet, if you're comfortable enough, you're good enough with that one move, you don't think Team 1 can counter it, and you are 1907 Fenerbahçe, maybe just staying consistent is the way you play this out.
There's not too many things that I would expect them to change. Mid lane champ pool is the biggest one that I feel like changes game to game for the most part. It's otherwise a, tank in the top lane, tank in the jungle, Padden on some kind of late game carry. It does feel like a very consistent game plan for them so far at the play-in stage of Worlds, and I don't think there's a good reason to turn away from it given the fact that he just won.
Yeah, how crucial is Frozen in the center of all this, on the Taliyah, on the roaming champions? Because we saw non-roaming champions banned away from Orianna and LeBlanc LeBlanc maybe more so, but Orianna feels very locked into that lane. Do we want to continue seeing him on champions that can roam like the Taliyah? How valuable is that to Fenerbahçe as a team?
Yeah, now the reason that I feel like Frozen getting Taliyah is super valuable is because he's a shot caller and a communicator for the team, not just for the whole roster, but for Crash specifically. The fact that you can unlock him, get him to roam around the Rift, feels to me like the optimal strategy for 1907 Fenerbahçe. You can put him on the Orianna, he'll be able to call the team fights and get the shots going around those fights, but if you get him early and then the whole game starts to snowball with early leads, which is in this matchup what I'd imagine you want to do, well then I feel like Taliyah's the most important type of style for him to have for Frozen.
I mean, even this game, you saw that like Crash came to the mid lane early on. They tried to contest a blue buff. He even died for it, and they still did fine. So it does feel like a bit of a mismatch there in the mid lane, that something can go wrong. You can give Brewster a kill early on, and it's still something that Frozen can play from a deficit in.
Well, we're going to have to see what they want to do. That was only the first game of the series. Meet us back here for Game 2 of 1907 Fenerbahçe versus Team 1 right after the break.
First kill as Vert there as well, the flash away, but Thaldrin's going to get stunned, and this will be first blood for Team 1 in the top lane.
Sai dali, barril explosivo, acaba trazendo o Vert, olha pra próxima, ele ainda pode ser eliminado. Muita pressão pra cima dele, a eliminação é quase certa. Ele vai tentar ganhar tempo, mas acaba caindo para o Thaldrin.
Flash straight into Crash. Brewster knocked back, the seismic shove will spell his end. Fenerbahçe get the kill. Absolute pops the barrier, wild gun used as well. The dive continues. Fenerbahçe trying to get what they can out of this fight. They take the tower first, the stun is going to land onto Absolute, ball and dead. It's a double for Frozen, and one are just getting scattered to the winds. A great binding from Japone, 3 kills down. 1907 Fenerbahçe are looking to clean this up. It will be a clean ace for them as they take down Absolute. They're going for the Nexus towers, and they're going to be 1-0 up against Team 1.